But he didn't do that this morning.
Are you supposed to go to everyone's door and give a knock on the door?
Did he give a knock on your door?
No. I don't think so. Well, I got up in Chang, but I don't think he gave a knock. I know Chang gave a knock on Balaram's door because he wasn't up. But
okay.
Oh no, Chang, Damodar. See, it's so hard. It's like a subconscious thing. And you don't think about it, and then you go, oh wait, what's that?
By now, made the adjustment.
It's funny when you're doing that book score the day after he got named, and you put back to 10, you're like, wait, who did this?
Yeah. Sit up. Okay. And wait. Let's see.
Oh, I don't want to go with the tangle here.
What's that? I'll leave this off now. Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda.
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 Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gora Bhakta Vrinda.
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 Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda.
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 Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gora Bhakta Vrinda.
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 Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda.
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 Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gora Bhakta Vrinda.
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 Jai Nishpad Paramahamsa Bhajagacharya Sturta Shri Srimad Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON B.B.T. Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Vishnupad Paramahamsa Bhajagacharya Sturta Shri Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur
Ki Jai.
Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda Ki
Ki
Jai.
Jai.
Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur
Ki Jai.
Srimad Chaitanya Charitamrita Ki Jai.
Jai.
Samaveda Bhaktivinoda
Ki
Ki
Jai.
Jai. All glory to the assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
All glory to the assembled
Hare
devotees.
Krishna.
All glory to the assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
All glory to Shri Guru and Bhagavatam.
Shri Guru.
Hare Krishna.
I was wondering if it would feel too cold if I sat outside and opened the door.
I don't know. I think it'll be okay. I can always put this back on. Go ahead. It's the lights are too much for you. But this mic is too much for me. Shall I just whisper? Down, down, down. More down. Hare Krishna. I don't know. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. All right, that'll be okay. Now, because several times when I've given the class or led the kirtan, weird people have walked in, somebody has to keep an eye on that door. You have to watch and see if whoever's walking in, we had, you here, you were in here. You were in here, you were here. When Vishwamohan walked in, drunk, laid down here, we had to drag him out and we got to call the cops. Yeah.
It's not a Sunday feast, right?
No, it wasn't a Sunday feast. It was a Bhagavad Gita class.
Oh.
Next Wednesday or Tuesday or something. So because there's only a few of us, we have to be vigilant about that. So just keep an eye on that door if someone weird walks in. That's why I'll propose again for the 30th time that we have a regular door on the outside that actually shuts, and we can lock, and people have to open it rather than just open wide, which is an invitation to anybody, oh, let me go in there, looks interesting. You know what I'm saying? It would be a good deterrent. Just a suggestion. Okay. Give me a second here. I don't know what that guy was into. Was he drunk?
I don't know. I think it was just kind of...
Just weird, right?
I don't know.
Hard to tell, huh?
I couldn't tell. Weird.
That's how dark this age is. You can't even tell if people are drunk, because everyone is more or less drunk. Okay, so give me a second here. So we began this program last week, but everyone practically was up in LA, so we had one member of the audience, Santosh, and we read from these Chaitanya Charitamrita. So the verse of the day, we have more title than verse, is part of Sanatana Goswami's instructions to Lord Chaitanya in the 20th chapter. It begins his instructions there. It goes on for 4 or 5 chapters, actually. But this is near the beginning. So I'm just going to recap what he said before, which is about 5 or 6 verses like that. Just reading the translations, maybe 1 or 2 famous. This way we'll go on. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshur Midatam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance. My spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Shri Parampara. All right. So, on this 18th day of June 2017 in SanDiego, reading from Srimad Chaitanya Charitamrita by Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we're reading today from chapter 20 of the Madhya Lila, text 117, but we're going to have an introduction beginning in text 107 and then 108 all the way up to that. So Sanatana Goswami approached Lord Chaitanya and he surrendered unto him, and it's a good model for what he said. Keyami kenayamai jare tapatrai iha nahi jane kema nehita hoy. This is text 102. Who am I? He asked Lord Chaitanya. Why do the threefold miseries always give me trouble? If I do not know this, how can I be benefited? Actually, I don't know how to inquire about the goal of life and the process for obtaining it. Now, this is a very nice little phrase we should know. Sadhya, sadhana. Sadhya is the goal, and sadhana is how to get there, just like we go sadhana bhakti. So that's the standard thing to ask to any exalted personality. What is the goal of my life, and how can I achieve it? Not anything else. So he says, I don't know how to ask. Being merciful upon me, please explain all these truths. Lord Chaitanya said, Lord Krishna has bestowed his full mercy upon you so that all these things are known to you. For you, the threefold miseries certainly don't exist. Since you possess Krishna's potency, you certainly know these things. However, it's the nature of a sadhu to inquire. Although he knows these things, the sadhu inquires for the sake of strictness. And then he quotes a verse from the Naradiya Purana. Those who are eager to awaken their spiritual consciousness and who thus have unflinching, undeviated intelligence certainly attain the desired goal of life very soon. So then he goes on, O Sanatana, you are fit to propagate the cult of devotional service. Therefore, gradually hear all the truths about it from me. I shall tell you about them. And then it's his famous verse that we should know. I'll just give one line at a time. Jivera swarupoi Krishnera nityadas Krishnera tatasta shakti beda bed prakash. Beda bed prakash. Okay. It is the living entity's constitutional position to be an eternal servant of Krishna, because he is the marginal energy of Krishna and a manifestation simultaneously one with and different from the Lord. This is the answer to the question, who am I? Not the body. This is the soul, and he's describing it next. Okay. The Lord, Krishna has 3 varieties of energy. And then he quotes a verse from the Vishnu Purana. He starts quoting a bunch of verses from Vishnu Purana. This one Prabhu would quote, Ekadeshastita yagna dusna vistaraniyata. Just as the illumination of a fire, which is situated in one place, is spread all over, the energies of the Lord, Parabrahman, are spread all over this universe. So there's nothing in existence but Krishna and his energies. Lord Krishna naturally has three energetic transformations. These are known as the spiritual potency, the living entity potency, and the illusory potency. So the spiritual potency is called the Chit Shakti, or the Antaranga Shakti, the internal energy, and the living entity potency, Jiva Shakti, and the illusory potency, Maya Shakti. So the internal, external, and marginal. And then he quotes again from Vishnu Puran. Originally, Krishna's energy is spiritual. The energy known as living entity is also spiritual, but there's another energy called illusion, which consists of fruit of activity. That is the Lord's third energy. Again from Vishnu Puran. All the creative energies which are inconceivable to a common man exist in the Lord. These inconceivable energies act in the process of creation, maintenance, and annihilation. O chief of the ascetics, just as there are two energies possessed by fire, heat, and light, these inconceivable creative energies are the natural characteristics of the absolute truth. Then he described the Krishna, the Chaitra Gya Shakti. This should be a familiar phrase from the 13th chapter. Krishna wanted to know who was the Chaitra Gya, who was the knower of the field, and Krishna answered there's two knowers of the field, the living entity and the super soul. The Chaitra Gya Shakti is the living entity, it means knower of the field. Although he has the facility to live in either the material world or the spiritual world, he suffers the threefold miseries of material existence because he's influenced by avidya, or nescience, which covers his constitutional position. And then again from Vishnu Puran, this living entity covered by the influence of nescience exists in different forms in the material condition. O king, he is thus proportionately freed from the influence of the material energy to greater or lesser degrees. So this morning I was watching the little bug was crawling. Now, he came to the right place, but he doesn't have the ability to understand. So the poor bug is much lower because he's covered. It's just covered proportionally. The same living entity is in the bug as in us and is in Brahma, but there are different proportions of covering, and that's why you see different forms. And then this very famous verse from the Gita, Apare mitastam nyam pakadi vidime param. Besides the inferior energies of Madhyam Arjuna, there's another superior energy of mind which comprises the living entities who are exploiting the resources of this material inferior nature. So then the question is, well, how did we get here? Why did these living entities, which are we're embodied, why are we here while the others are in the internal energy? And that's what this verse is about. Krishna Buli se jiva nadi bahimukha. Krishna Buli se jiva nadi bahimukha. Atayeva maya tari deha sangsara dukkha. Oh, Prabhu, do you want to chant it? And Krishna Buli se jiva nadi bahirmukha. Ateva maya tari deha sangsara dukkha. Krishna Buli se jiva nadi bahirmukha. Ateva maya tari deha sangsara dukkha. Okay, we'll go on. Krishna Buli. Forgetting Krishna. Say Jeev, that living entity. Anadi, from time immemorial. Bahirmukha, attracted by the external feature. It literally means turning your face away from Krishna to the external world. Ataeva, therefore. Maya, the illusory energy. Tare, to him. Deya, gives. Sangsara dukkha, miseries of the material existence. Translation: forgetting Krishna, the living entity has been attracted by the external feature from time immemorial. Therefore, the illusory energy Maya gives him all kinds of misery in his material existence. Now, in this purport, Prabhupada is giving this succinct explanation of how we fell to the material world. When the living entity forgets his constitutional position as an eternal servant of Krishna, he is immediately entrapped by the illusory external energy. The living entity is originally part and parcel of Krishna and is therefore the superior energy of Krishna. He is endowed with inconceivable, minute energy that works inconceivably within the body. However, the living entity, forgetting his position, is situated in material energy. The living entity is called a marginal energy because by nature he is spiritual, but by forgetfulness he is situated in the material energy. Thus he has the power to live either in the material energy or in the spiritual energy, and for this reason he's called marginal energy. Being in the marginal position, he is sometimes attracted by the external illusory energy, and this is the beginning of his material life. When he enters the material energy, he is subjected to the threefold time measurement, past, present, and future. Past, present, and future belong only to the material world. They do not exist in the spiritual world. The living entity is eternal, and he existed before the creation of this material world. Unfortunately, he has forgotten his relationship with Krishna. The living entity's forgetfulness is described herein as anadi, which indicates that it has existed since time immemorial. One should understand that due to his desire to enjoy himself in competition with Krishna, the living entity comes into material existence. So believe it or not, this is a controversial purport. Yes. There is a whole school of thought, of Gaudiya Vaishnava thought, since Prabhupada's disappearance it became prominent, that insists that we were never in the spiritual world. And that this word anadi, which Prabhupada translates as from time immemorial in the verse, right? Anadi Bhakti, literally means without beginning. Means we've always been here. We've always forgotten Krishna. And therefore we're suffering samsara. And if we develop our dormant Swarup, Shakti, our Krishna consciousness, then we can go to Godhead. No back home, none of that stuff. But we go to Godhead. There's a whole thing. And when this, anyway, there's a section here. There's one sentence here, which says, being in the marginal position, he is sometimes attracted by the external illusory energy. Fairly recently, within the last few months, there was a whole uproar about that particular edit. I adjusted that. What Prabhupada says, when he's in the marginal position, he is sometimes attracted by the external illusory energy. But it's clear from this purport and from Lord Chaitanya's statement about the Swarup of the Shakti. Remember the famous verse, Jivera Swarupa Krishnera Nityadas, Krishnera Tatasta Shakti Beda Be Prakash. So the first line is the most famous. Jivera Swarupa. Of the Jiva, the Swarup is. The Swarup, or the constitutional position of the Jiva is to be an eternal servant of Krishna. That makes perfect sense, right? So, then the next one is not so famous. Krishnera Tatasta Shakti. That's the part about the marginal energy. Of Krishna, the Jiva is the Tatasta Shakti. Tatasta means marginal. Shakti means energy. So that's part of our Swarup. That's all part of our Swarup. Jivera Swarupoi, Krishnera Nityadas, Krishnera Tatasta Shakti, Beta Beta. All three of those are part of our Swarup. There's never a time when we're not the marginal energy. We can't become the internal energy. You can't become Lalita. You can't become Vishaka. You certainly can't become Radharani or any of them. They're internal energy. They're not jivas like us. There are millions and trillions of jivas there, but these are iconic, eternal associates. So, but the marginal energy, that's our Swarup, as well as to be one with it, different from Krishna. Beta Prakash. So being when in the marginal position sounds like we're sometimes not in the margin. But being in the marginal position said, oh, this was a huge uproar. This is a mistake, because it means that the beginning of a spiritual life, material life, means that we have in the spiritual life, you're still marginal. Anyway, I don't want to get wrapped up about this. But it's plain as day. When Prabhupada was on the planet and he was writing purpose like this, which echoed what he spoke and all the letters, no one had a confusion. There were some questions which then Prabhupada resolved by speaking, answering letters, and writing this Crow and Tal essay and so forth. So I just want to let you know this is somewhat controversial. There it is. It's right in the book. So now he's describing what the condition of the living entity is in the material world. And he says, text 118, Kabo svarga utai, kabu naraka dubai, danja jane raja jena nadite jubai. In the material condition, the living entity is sometimes raised to higher planetary systems and material prosperity, and sometimes drowned in the hellish situation. His state is exactly like that of a criminal whom a king punishes by submerging him in water and then raising him again from the water. And the way Prabhupada describes it is just like waterboarding. It's waterboarding. You know, you put someone in a situation where he almost drowns and you bring him out. You know, but it's straight punishment. They're not trying to get some information from it. It's just a form of punishment.
They did that in America. It's called the dunking stool.
Dunking stool. That's it. That's probably where they got the idea of it, the waterboarding thing. Purport. In the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad 4.3.16, it is stated, Asango yayam purushaha. Who can say what that means? Asango yayam purushaha. You know? It means that the purusha, the living entity, really has no association with this material energy. That's part of the illusion. We're thinking that with his body. But ultimately, the living entity does not mix with the material body. That's in the Gita at the end of the 13th chapter also. The living entity is always free from the contamination of the material world. One who is not materially infected and who does not forget Krishna as his master is called Nitya Mukta, meaning eternally liberated. In other words, one who is eternally liberated from material contamination is called Nitya Mukta. From time immemorial, the Nitya Mukta living entity has always been a devotee of Krishna, and his only attempt has been to serve Krishna. He's in the spiritual world. Thus, he never forgets his eternal servitorship to Krishna. Any living entity who forgets his eternal relationship with Krishna is under the sway of the material condition. Bereft of the Lord's transcendental loving service, he is subjected to the reactions of fruitive activity. When he is elevated to the higher planetary systems due to worldly pious activities, he considers himself well situated. But when he is subjected to punishment, he thinks himself improperly situated. Thus, material nature awards and punishes the living entity. When the living entity is materially opulent, material nature is rewarding him. When he is materially embarrassed, material nature is punishing him. This one note in Prabhupada's language, embarrassed here doesn't mean, oh, you know, you're blushing because something. Embarrassed means compromised or restricted. That's another meaning of it. Prabhupada use that term often. So just to review, let's see. The living entity by nature is not part of this material energy. That was explained a few verses back when he quoted the Vishnu Purana. Vishnu Shakti Pada Prokta Chaitra Gyaka Tata Para. Vishnu Shakti Pada Prokta. Vishnu has his internal energies, and the Chaitra Gya, living entity, is part of the internal entity. Para. We're by nature para, like Krishna says in the Gita. But the third energy, the avidya potency, because we're minute, can cover us when we bahirmukha, when we turn away from Krishna. It's very graphic, this bahirmukha. It's just like, it's an offense. This is why we're not supposed to turn our back to the Lord. You're not supposed to sit, with your back to the Lord. That's the original sin. That's why we're here, because we turned our back to Krishna. Bayam dvitiya banavesha taksad isha apetasya viparhiyo smati. Apetasya means the same thing. It means turning from the Isha, turning from the Lord, and losing that sense of protection which we really have. And then fear. When we see things separate from Krishna because we forgot about him, we want to forget about him so we can enjoy, then fear arises. Because then we feel ourselves to be what we really are, helpless little living entities in this big world. So that's what's being described here. This is the origin of our entanglement in the material world. Somehow or other, and there's no other explanation, the desire to enjoy arises to be in competition with Krishna. And we turn away, and we forget Krishna, and then Maya's right there. Prabhupada would often quote, even more than this one, this verse that we have on the board, the verse from the Jagannatha Pandit's Prema Vivarta. Krishna Buri, Krishna Bahamukha Jiv Bhoga Vanchakari, Nikatastamaya Japati Adhari. So he starts with the Krishna Bahamukha Jiv. So turning away from Krishna. Why? Bhoga Vanchakari. Because you want to enjoy Bhoga, material energy. Then what happens? Nikatastamaya. Maya is right there. She doesn't have to travel anywhere. She's right there. Nikatastamaya Tari, Japati Adhari. Just like tackling you on a football field. She pulls you down and covers you over. These two potencies. Covering and throwing. And then as long as we're trying to enjoy, we stay illusion birth after birth after birth, different species. So this instruction of Lord Chaitanya that Prabhupada is giving us here in English, through the CC and the whole movement, is the intervention of Krishna to give those living entities who are receptive to the message the clue or the knowledge of how we can get out of this trap we've been in since time immemorial. Any questions or discussion? Yes, Prabhu.
I just read in the first canto, I heard this word, Nitya Bada.
Yeah, Nitya Bada. There's Nitya Mukta and Nitya Bada. Now, it's very interesting because they always use the word Nitya. Now, we're Nitya Badas. Means that we've been here since time immemorial. But it's not literally Nitya. Now, Nitya means eternal, but it means so long that it seems like it's eternal also. That's why the immemorial, time immemorial, it happened, but millions of births of Brahma ago. So it might as well be eternally, you see. Because there has to be, you have to have relativized Nitya there. Okay. Because what's the point? If we're Nitya Baddhas now, and we can't get free from that and become Nitya Muktas, then what's the point of practicing Krishna consciousness? So Nitya can't literally mean Nitya, otherwise there's no point in us practicing Krishna consciousness. So the same way, this is some of the arguments we worked out with this huge debate on the fall of the Jiva. So if Nitya is also virtually Nitya, for Nitya Baddha, why couldn't it be for Nitya Mukta that way also? You see what I'm saying? In other words, most of the living entities in the spiritual never come here. There's this 3/4, 1/4 thing. We're one of. So, but there's occasionally someone does, and because of you're dealing with infinite time, those occasional lapses in the living entity, that's us. That's how we populated this world, the minimalist living entity. So that's, yes, Nitya Mukta, Nitya Baddha. That's part of it. What were you going to ask?
Well, you're kind of answering the question through his answer. Because I was trying to understand where the opposing side to the argument, where they're getting their authority from and where they're trying to make their stance. It doesn't make any sense from a logical standpoint.
Here's their argument.
Yeah.
And if Krishna's all attractive, why would we ever leave?
Right.
Even if we have free will. Therefore, we were not with Krishna. We were in the Brahman, or we were in the unmanifest, this, and there's all kinds of different artists. There's almost Buddhist ideas. There's all kinds of arguments. But it's because they can't process that if Krishna's all attractive, why would we leave? And the argument is that, just look around you. People do stupid things all the time.
Right.
People smoke cigarettes. People drink. I got married. I was saving it today. So, no, but people do things, foolish things all the time. Simultaneously, while being so long, Nitya Baddha, it appears unlimited, appears like it's eternal. On the same hand, it's just like a dream. So, if you think about it, the living entity, the cowherd boy or the whatever, thinks, why always Krishna, Krishna? I'd like to be at the center. Zing! We get this material world. You can try it. Prabhupada says you start out first class. Start out as Lord Brahma. Give it a go. See if you're happy not serving Krishna. But the whole sojourn, Nitya Baddha, lifetimes, this and that, is just like a dream. A dream can seem like it's forever, right? So it's
the infinite malleability of time. This is you're practically infinite.
I understand our position. I mean, you're clearly stating what I already understand, but I'm trying to understand their point of view.
That's their hang-up. Their hang-up is...
They're getting it from different Gaudiya lines.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, why would Krishna waste his time if we can't, or we were always like with our hand, why would he waste his time?
The real origin, if I may.
No, please.
Is the need for, because the real problem with us always being here, this is the line that is most prominent now, that has become, is that we've always been here. Anadi Bahimukha, is that it obviates or negates the own free will. In other words, well, what did we do? If we've always been here, how did, that seems unfair. We got the 3/4 up in the spiritual world. We were created there. Yeah. I mean, that seems pretty cruel of Krishna, put us through all this, But so the idea is it's entirely our own fault. You can't blame Krishna. That's the whole idea. And Prabhupada perfectly.
I have some thoughts, but I'd like to hear your answer. He's asking, hey, yeah, that makes sense to me. What is the basis, validity, attraction of the other argument, of the no-fall argument?
The attraction of the no-fall argument is that once you are in your swarup and experiencing the flood of ananda at every moment, it's so blissful that there's no question of turning from it. In other words, you couldn't imagine anything more attractive, and there's no point in other words, their idea is that it's. I mean, I've talked to these guys. It's a great offense to think that these ordinary people walking around. I remember riding in a car. I was in St. Petersburg, believe it or not, Russia, and it was right after the fall of the Soviet Union, and it was still very bleak. Everyone was walking around with plain clothes and smokestack. It was like and the person next to me, who was part of this, he was saying, do you really think that babushka walking over there was once dancing with Krishna in the spiritual world? How does that? Yeah. The answer is yeah. I mean, that's the idea, is that you can fall. I mean, that's the whole point here of this. Sometimes you're up to Brahma, and sometimes you're down in the worm and stool. The same Brahma, so exalted as down here. And so it's, anyway, there's a lot. I have a whole file of full of the Jiva stuff that you can read up on it.
I have a book. I have that book.
Yes, there's several books. We have one that was published officially, Origin of the Jiva, which is very fascinating. And the other one by Druta Karma, which was never actually published, but I have it in PDF form, which is also very, very convincing. The main question, here's my whole point that simplifies it for me. Because you can go to Vishwanath Chakravarti, you can go to Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and you can glean quotes here and there and get yourself all confused. But the question is, as followers of Srila Prabhupada, as part of this institution, part of it, what it means to take initiation here and be a follower of Prabhupada, is to accept his explanation. So the key question is, what did Prabhupada actually think about it? What was his idea? And in my mind, there's absolutely no question that he explained it. He revealed his mind many times. That once we were there, we could go back home, back to Godhead. Once we were there, and just like this purport is ideal, And there's others too I can share with you. Very explicit. We weren't happy in the service of Krishna. This is right in the Bhagavatam, 4th canto. And therefore we came here, like that.
I'll give you another one. They say, first off, there are quotes from Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. There are quotes, Prabhupada's guru, also from Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, that talk about the fall of the jiva once we were with Krishna and we fell. So they try to present that, Prabhupada's an anomaly. That our line says one thing, and why would Prabhupada say something, but it's not a fact. started off in the Brahman, or we started off in the material world. So therefore, Prabhupada gave us a false answer because he knew we couldn't take it. They say that. You've heard that one?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
No, that's the big.
Well, God being blue and playing a flute,
Yeah,
and
there's
a
a lot of
cowherd
things
boy, tending goldfish that swallow whales, the moon,
Yeah, no,
being a heavenly
and
planet.
all the thing with the ladies.
Swallowed a lot,
Right.
Swallowed a Jeev is not really, as much of a mind blower.
Yeah, the preaching strategy, because it's like
The preaching
the
strategy.
thing is that Shankaracharya was actually a partial expansion of Lord Shiva. He was instructed by Krishna to speak Mayavad philosophy. I don't know if you know that. And but he didn't believe it, himself. And so at the end he said, Bhaja Govinda, Bhaja Govinda, Bhaja Govinda, what he really believed. So in the same way, they say, Prabhupada, he knew the Siddhanta, that Siddhanta is that we were never there. But because of the tender-hearted, Westerners couldn't take it, therefore he said, but it's completely bogus. He was preaching this in 1944 in his first BTG when he didn't even think, it was 20 years before he even thought of coming to the West. In other words, when he's preaching in India, it's the same thing. So the whole thing is bogus. And of course, all those quotes about the women, which he wouldn't compromise, the moon shot, which he lost devotees each time he escaped. And he wouldn't compromise. Huh? So the thing is, that argument doesn't work. And the reason why it came about, it's a history. There's a few minutes. Because I was right in the middle of this. A lot of this goes back to, or it became very prominent in the early 90s when we were trying to put out the Tattva Sandarbha. Gopi-Pranadana Prabhu was involved. He wasn't the main translator. And so, but one of the main translator was being influenced by the outsiders, and so was the main editor. And so, this issue was roiling around. So the GBC said, okay, next year, each side present its case, and we'll make a decision. Did we fall from the spiritual world or not? So the other side, they wrote a book. Now they wanted to keep the funding, the BBT funding coming, so that they would be able to publish their book. So they came up with this idea. Oh, Prabhupada, he knew obviously knew the Siddhanta, but he was preaching otherwise in order to, because of our tender heart. So this came out in a book. It's called My Kunta's Not Even Needful. I have that book on my shelf, my lowest shelf.
But here's the thing. Even if you accept that logic, which is fallacious in so many ways, but even if you accept the logic, well, this is how Prabhupada saw the West, knowing that we don't go to some Calvinistic thing that some people are saved, some people are automatically cursed. No. So therefore, Prabhupada had this preaching strategy. Well, if that's the case, where did he ever tell us to stop the strategy? If that's what Prabhupada thought was best for the West, that this is how you present it once we were with Krishna, where like Bhaja Govinda, at the end of his life, Sankaracharya renounced the whole thing and said, you fools and rascals just worship Krishna. Where do we find Prabhupada in his last days in Vrindavan saying, hey, it was all a preaching strategy, but now do something different? Right? Do we find that?
No.
So, I mean,
the whole thing falls apart on that, and eventually they gave up on that. And and really, this is the reason why it's so dangerous to start, going down that road, because it inevitably takes you away from Prabhupada's Siddhanta and Prabhupada's preaching, and then you start having doubts about the whole ISKCON thing, and you're out. You're looking elsewhere for enlightenment and everything. I mean, we had, where we because if you read Prabhupada's books, and we read every morning, like the purports, eventually you come to a point where Prabhupada says very explicitly, we fell from the spiritual world. We had a devotee, if you recall, he was in the kitchen, and he was initiated in this camp. Anyway, it gets a little complicated. But he couldn't take this idea, because his Gurudev was not into it. And so eventually he couldn't stay here. I mean, because, again and again, you hear it again and again. I remember I gave a class once, it was a Sunday, and I knew that in the audience there were a few no-falls. And so I specifically read one purport with Prabhupada explicit.
good for you.
Yeah, fourth canto. Anyway, it's got to be 8:30.
One last thing.
It's lively.
Prabhupada that Prabhupada, told them on the phone, north, east, south, west, pick a direction. But you cannot preach that here. This is ISKCON. And what does it say on the building? I saw. Yeah, I think it's something else. Prabhupada showed up at the Detroit temple. I was there. All the devotees are out in front. Govardhan, who I can never repay, our temple president. Everything was beautiful. Everything was immaculate. I'll tell you some stories about Govardhan Prabhupada some other time. But Prabhupada stopped and he said, it doesn't say founder Acharya, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami on the building. And he let Govardhan have it. Why? This is impersonal. The next day you could be sure Govardhan we stayed up all night, we painted a nice sign. Prabhupada got out of his car. Very nice. So Prabhupada, who repeatedly showed himself to be humility personified, trying to hang a picture in Detroit, Govardhan and I, Prabhupada sitting at his desk, bumped into him. Govardhan said, Prabhupada, you want to get up and move? Prabhupada said, for service, you can stand on my head. So many examples of Prabhupada's humility personified, but he hammered and hammered His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, founder Acharya. This is his institution. In ISKCON, this is what we have to do. We have to follow founder Acharya. You want to say something else? It's a free world. North, east, south, west, pick a direction. But don't try to come in here and shift everything around to make it comfortable for you.
Right.
People do that all the time. Doties, this, that. They come and they want to shift the whole thing around so it's comfortable for them. But that's not what Prabhupada said. So what can we do? Prabhupada said, one time Prabhupada mentioned that Avajante Mamukha. And the audience was tittering. Prabhupada just called them fools and rascals. Prabhupada said, don't sue me. Prabhupada said, what can I do? He said, bring libel suit against Bhagavad Gita. So that's our duty. That disciple means discipline. So we have to repeat as Prabhupada said. And if you want to do something else, fine. Start miscon, discon, datcon, whatever you want to be. But you can't be ISKCON. We have to be loyal to our founder Acharya. Otherwise, what kind of disciples are we?
We'll close in a second, but it's important to know those places in the books where you can refer to, because the way things go, inevitably, if you're preaching somewhere, you're going to meet somebody who has doubts about this. And they may be very innocent. I read somewhere on the internet and said, what's the story with this? And then it's going to say, well, Prabhupada says, boom, and you come to this purport. This is the purport. This is one of the main ones, 2117. You can refer to. Just read that purport and, oh, now I understand. Especially if Prabhupada's speaking from the book, Okay. All glories to Prabhupada. Hare Krishna.